Hey everyone, I bet you know what we're here to talk about today. We're talking about this leaked draft opinion by the Supreme Court that now has been authenticated, or at least Chief Justice Roberts has said it's real. So we're going to talk to Neal Katyal about what this means and what you as citizens can do to let your feelings be known about this impending decision. Neal is, as you know, is a former clerk for Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, former acting Solicitor General, and a constitutional law expert. Hey, Neal, it's sort of strange that we were just talking about this on Friday. I am preparing a multi-part podcast, as I mentioned to you, and I want to say hi to my friends who are joining this conversation. First of all, let me just get your reaction to this leaked decision and what you thought when you read some of the things that Sam Alito was saying in it, Justice Alito, I should say.
Yeah, I'm devastated by what the draft opinion says, and it is a draft opinion. You say you're right; it's been confirmed now by the Chief Justice, but it's only confirmed as a draft, and it's at least theoretically possible that it doesn't become a majority decision of the Supreme Court. Katie, the way it works is they hear oral argument. They heard it here in December. The justices then go and meet in conference, just the 9 of them, and they take a tentative vote after discussing the case. And then the senior most justice in the majority assigns the opinion. So the Chief Justice is always the senior most justice. If he were in the majority, he would have kept the case for himself because, that's kind of consistent with his role as Chief Justice in a big case like this, but he didn't. And so it went down to, looks like Justice Thomas, who assigned it then to Justice Alito. And at the time, it looks like there was a straw vote, basically of 5 votes, to formally and fully overrule Roe versus Wade. And that's what the draft opinion says. Now, it's at least theoretically possible after that some justices read the draft opinion, they say, hey, I don't agree with it. Actually, I think Roe versus Wade should remain the law of the land. But there's a couple problems with that. One is it's really hard to change a Supreme Court opinion. I mean, sometimes it happens. It's rumored to have happened in the Affordable Care Act with the Chief Justice changing his vote to uphold Obamacare, but it's really rare. And number two, the question is, where would that swing vote, where that switched vote come from? Because the Chief Justice is now irrelevant. This is why, as we were talking about last Friday, putting Justice Barrett on the court to replace Justice Ginsburg changed things in the most massive way possible. There are now 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice is the most or the least conservative of the 6, but his vote doesn't matter as long as the other 5 hold together. So that's
be
why.
Or even if Justice Roberts does not go with the majority opinion on the Supreme Court. So as you said, it's really stacked against this decision. This is, as we've said, a draft decision. Justice Roberts, I believe, said that the language could change, but it's you clerk for Stephen Breyer. How different could it be, and what realistically what will happen with this decision in terms of when it's ultimately handed down?
Yeah, I can't predict what would happen. Anything can happen. And by the way, this leak is so unprecedented. It's just hard to even fathom how the justices will react to it. But it does seem to me like at the end of the day, it's a very hard thing to actually see change. And here's how bad this decision is, Katie. It upholds a Mississippi law, which has no rape or incest exception. So now it is totally permissible, fair game. If this draft becomes the opinion, it's fair game for any state in the country to ban abortion, even if the woman was raped.
Not only that, but we should point out, and I think I always point out that we have I have a very smart, well-informed following, but it's worth mentioning that I believe 26 states have what's called trigger laws, Neal. So if in fact it goes back to the states, if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, those states automatically will outlaw abortion. And is that your understanding, 26?
Yeah, so I think it's 26 that will likely outlaw abortion. I think only 13 have the trigger laws already set up and in place, and another 13 are expected to do them. And so in those 26 or so states, abortion will be illegal, perhaps under any circumstance, even rape or incest. Now, if you live in one of those states, you can still travel to another state if you have the financial means and obtain an abortion there. But even there, Katie, what's worrisome, there's two things that are worrisome on that front. One is some states are thinking about trying to criminalize a woman going across state lines to get an abortion, which is, medieval. But, the reasoning of this Alito opinion is, hey, it's got to be in the Constitution, the individual right. And there's no right to travel in the Constitution expressly. So who knows what they would think about that. And the other is that there's Republicans in Congress now who are talking about a federal national ban on abortion in all 50 states, which is why, politics matters a lot here and who we send to Washington.
That's right. That's right. And elections have consequences, which is something that people really need to be aware of. Without getting too much in the weeds, Neal, but because you are an expert on the Constitution, part of Alito's argument, and I've heard this through the years, that there is no explicit protection for abortion, that this was under the auspices of privacy. Can you explain in very sort of simplistic terms about how that works, and the other aspect of the law being viability, and what talked about by Sandra Day O'Connor when this came up in 1992?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So Roe versus Wade is based on this idea that we all have a zone of privacy in our lives, and women in particular have a privacy right to deal with their bodies in the way that they see fit, at least through up to the point of viability, 25 weeks. That's what Roe said. Now, the hard conservative objection to that has always been to say, well, I look at the Constitution, I don't see abortion in the Constitution, I don't even see privacy in the Constitution, therefore you have no constitutional right. And Justice Alito picks up on that logic in this draft opinion, says that, and says for a right to be in the Constitution, it's either got to be expressly there, or as he says, firmly rooted in the deeply rooted in the firm traditions of the American people. Now, that is a really outmoded way of thinking about the Constitution. Robert Bork had that view, and he didn't get confirmed to the Supreme Court because of it. And Alito's
the ultimate strict constructionist interpretation of the Constitution, that it has got to be referred to in its original form, which makes no sense because that means Brown versus Board of Education would never pass. I mean, there's so much precedence to making the Constitution a living, breathing document that changes with the time.
You're 100% right. And, and conservatives embrace this because they come up with all sorts of made up constitutional rights when they want to strike something down, like the Affordable Care Act or things, so this is a game that they've been playing for a long time too. But here, if this methodology holds, and I'm writing a piece that'll come out in the Washington Post in a few hours about this, it does threaten the right to privacy generally. So the Supreme Court case in 1965 that said married couples have a right to go get birth control. You can't criminalize it. That's based on the same foundations as Roe versus Wade. So if you knock one out, you very well may be knocking the other out. Even the right of marriage equality, which the Supreme Court finally recognized in 2015, that is subject to the same thing. Well, there's no right to gay marriage in the text of the Constitution. So, right. So anything is fair game. And you asked Katie about Justice O'Connor's opinion in the Casey decision in 1992. And I think what you said there is so important because what Justice O'Connor said, she's a Republican nominated justice, and she's joined by Justice Anthony Kennedy and Justice David Souter, who are all Republican appointees to the Supreme Court. And what she said is, even if you think Roe isn't the most persuasive decision on its face, the court's legitimacy now hinges on it because an entire generation of women and men have grown up with Roe in understanding that they have this right. And she says social expectations have crystallized around this. And if you take it away, if the court takes it away, she says the court's legitimacy would be in deep peril. And so that makes actually Roe like the hardest case to overrule. It's like a super precedent, and yet they did it here. So if you can do it here, why not do it on all the other things we're talking about?
So, and was there anything in the draft opinion that suggested that this was opening the door to delegitimizing or overturning other Supreme Court decisions and handing them back to the states?
Yeah, so there's two things. One, the court, or Justice Alito's opinion, protested too much. It said, "Oh, we're not in this case considering other things like the right to privacy generally." Of course not. You're just considering Roe versus Wade. So that to me wasn't persuasive. The second is the legal test that Justice Alito laid out. As I was saying, got to look and see: is it deeply in the is it firmly in the text of the explicitly in the Constitution? That test does really threaten all of these other things as well. So it's hard to overstate how significant this draft opinion is. If it becomes the law of the land, we're living in a very different country than the one that we grew up in.
Which is so strange because all over Latin America, we've seen women protesting, wearing green, and laws changing. So women did have access to safe and legal abortion. And so the rights are being expanded elsewhere in the world, and they're being restricted or overturned altogether in the United States of America. Let's talk about what.
But just one thing, Katie, on that. Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I think you're right to say there's a difference in the two. But I think we will wind up in the same place. I do not think this decision will stand. I don't think the women and men of America can let it stand. I think we have to take to the streets. We have to take to the ballot boxes and say this is not the country we live in. And I suspect at the end of that process, we will be like those other countries you mentioned. It'll take time, and there will be a lot of people hurt in the process whose rights to reproductive justice are denied to them. But 100%, I am confident that we will get to the right place in the end, but it's going to take a lot.
I know you don't have much time, but I just have to ask you a couple of other questions. Some of these justices made promises that they would respect precedents. I think I've seen reports about Susan Collins when she met with Brett Kavanaugh, and he said he would respect precedent and basically support a woman's right to choose. What do you think this tells us about the politicization of the Supreme Court? And moving forward, will there be a move to limit lifetime appointments for justices?
Yeah, so I do think it does show just how much the Republican Party monkeyed with the Supreme Court, and in really devastating ways. And so the result is you have a Supreme Court. They're all smart, they're all able, but far outside of the mainstream of American society at this point. And that has been a 50-year Republican project. And Senator Mitch McConnell, I'm sure, is grinning like a cat right now because it's come to fruition. And, I think one way or another, there has to be a change that will undo some of this. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But, the Republican Party has treated the Supreme Court, they've spit on it. They have not treated it with the dignity it deserves. They played game after game after game, and this is the result.
In fact, Lisa Murkowski, one of the few outspoken Republicans, told reporters this afternoon, if it goes in the direction that this leaked copy has indicated, I will just tell you that it rocks my confidence in the court right now. She is one of the few Republicans who I think will speak out and has always been in favor of abortion rights. So we may get more reaction along those lines. But before you go, I want to point out a couple of things. 1 in 4 women in this country has had an abortion. At one point, it was 1 in 3. Perhaps greater access to birth control has helped, which to me is the height of hypocrisy to be anti-choice and anti-contraception. It's like insane. But also, polls show that anywhere from 54 to 69% of Americans believe Roe v. Wade should be upheld, 18%, by the way, don't have an opinion. That may change. Only 28% believe it should be. I never said Susan Collins will be concerned. Spare me. I don't know if you're responding to someone else. But anyway, only 18%, 28% think it should be overturned. This is not representative of how the majority of Americans feel about this issue. So I know on Friday we talked about Congress getting involved. Can you tell people how that would work and what people who believe in reproductive rights for all Americans, safe and legal abortion, can do?
Yeah, this is really simple. So there's a bill pending in Congress right now that would codify Roe versus Wade and say, look, court, you can try and take it away, but we, the Congress of the United States, believe that a woman has a right to choose. And the House and the Senate can both pass that, in my view, by majority vote. You know, the House certainly has the votes right now. And I do think the Senate has more than a majority, particularly with Murkowski and others, guaranteeing that. Now, the objection will be, well, there's a filibuster requirement in the Senate that you need 60 votes, not 50, to move legislation. But here's where the Republicans can be hoisted by their own petard, because the Republican Party nucleared the filibuster. They got rid of it when it came to, what? You guessed it, 3 Supreme Court justices named Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Those are the ones who are the 3 of the 5 behind this, this leaked decision, assuming the decision holds. And if you can get rid of the filibuster for the most consequential decision that I think you face in the Senate, the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice, then gosh darn it, you should be able to get rid of it for overruling one of their decisions on an important issue like Roe versus Wade.
But Neal, obviously, this depends on what the Congress will look like, right, after the midterm elections.
No, Katie, it can happen tomorrow. You can have these votes. You can say we're going to nuclear the filibuster, and it would be a simple majority vote. President Biden would sign that legislation into being. And then, even if the Republicans took the House and Senate, which, by the way, I think if this legislation were passed and being talked about, I think makes it harder because, as you say, so many people are behind a woman's right to choose. But even if the Republicans took the House and Senate, they'd need to pass a bill to remove this new law, this abortion guaranteeing law. And what does that need? It needs a 2/3 vote because President Biden would veto it. So
why do you think that the House and Senate will act now before the midterms? And is that what, ladies, we're talking with my team. Has anybody said that, Neal, that this is something that is going to happen? I know that President Biden made a statement.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to go in a minute, but I do think that Senator Schumer suggested that he was going to bring this up on the floor quickly. And the reason I think it's got to be quick is because right now these rights are in peril, and every day that women don't have them. Right now they do still. It's a draft opinion. But the minute that draft, if it does become reality, is the minute that women will be denied reproductive justice. That's the minute that the Senate and the House should have a bill ready to go, passed with the filibuster strategy I'm talking about, because this is too important. The stakes are too high. And look, I understand, I believe so much in tradition and institutions. I get all of that, but the Republicans have spit on that. And the result is right now, it looks like millions of American women are going to be denied the right that we have understood they've had since 1973.
Neal, thank you. I know you're in Paris, right?
I am, yes.
Well, thank you for hopping on this Instagram Live. I think people really appreciate it. Do you have any idea who might have leaked this, by the way?
No idea. It doesn't make any sense to me. I certainly don't think it's a justice on either side. I trust the court. I respect the court, and they respect each other. They would never do something like this.
No, but don't you think maybe a clerk who was concerned about what was happening might have done it?
Doubt it. I mean, if so, the theory would be it's a conservative clerk because they thought maybe, one of the justices was moving away from the 5 Justice Alito draft. But, I don't put any stock in that. Yeah, it's all speculation. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Neal.